wanted to focus on the idea of the website, especially when it comes to building out a product and building out what we call an omni-channel brand. Now, remember the term omni-channel, it's relatively a new term. I've been practicing it most of my professional life, at least for the last 20 years, because I've been dealing with online opportunities since my first website is 99, right? So that's 26 years already. So we are now evolving. And of course, COVID helped us evolve faster, and we're evolving. And now with the addition of AI, the e-commerce has really been supercharged. And the idea of an omni-channel brand, by definition, means that your brand is available, your product is available everywhere. And when I say everywhere, think about you as a consumer. We all buy something, and most of us buy something and we jump on the phone, right? That's the first place we go to look to buy something normally. And we might go to Amazon. I think the numbers are product searches are on Amazon are like 90% of the people who search for new products go to Amazon, and a bunch of people go to Google. But now we're going also to AI, to ChatGPT and Gemini to look for products, right? So what comes up when you search for something? Well, what comes up is going to be that content. And the content is going to be ads or whatever it is you're putting out there. But it normally starts with a website, okay? So if you think back, and I go back to before COVID, everybody was racing to get a good website up and running, because if they didn't have a website, they were basically dead in the water, right? We all know that. And that was the only way that you could be in business. Well, now here we are 6 years after that, that necessity to get a website up and running if you didn't have one. Now we have fully evolved, and e-commerce is up higher than ever. Some of the best numbers we've had are coming through. People are now adapting e-commerce more now than ever before. And now with the last couple of years, and just recently the last couple of months with AI, we now have shopping embedded into AI, which is pretty cool. And we're going to start seeing that even more as AI becomes part of our lives, our daily lives. So we're going to start there. We're going to start from the basics, okay? Because there is a foundation we have to understand on websites first. This is not going to be a technical conversation. It's going to be a strategy conversation, a marketing conversation, so that you understand the reasons why behind we do these things. You don't need to be a web developer today. In fact, with AI, you don't have to touch code at all, because you can have AI do a website for you. I should say, not but you need to know the strategy. Okay. So if you use AI to create a website, that's great. But then what's the strategy behind that creation of the website? You still got to have a strategy, and you still got to understand why. And that's what we're going to talk about this evening. Okay. So let's look at what the omni-channel approach looks like. And remember, I said that omni-channel means the customer is in the center. And I want you to think about it in your own perspective, because you as a customer, you probably shop, let's say you shop groceries at the store. Let's say you go to the local store, the supermarket, and whatever it be, Aldi's or Publix or whatever place you go to over here. You might get groceries and things like that, maybe perishables from those places, but maybe you buy canned goods or pet food or whatever it is from other e-commerce providers. So you're basically using all the available tools to you as a consumer to get the product that you need. Now, if we're a brand that goes across all those tools, we need to make sure that we have availability in all those places. So if the customer is in the middle, what does that mean? Well, that means that we start with the top. Our website has to be good. It has to be strong. It has to be easy. Someone has to go there and be easily converted. And most of us today always go to a website if we're making a first time purchase, because maybe we want to validate that company is a true company. Okay. And then we could go to a store. a physical store. There's not a lot out there right now. Maybe then they don't exist everywhere, but maybe that product is also available in a store. Or we could just check out our device, right? In our hands, on mobile device. We can go and buy it straight from our mobile device. Or now, the last couple of years, we can also go to social. So we can buy product on social media as well. So that's important. And then what other things does the omnichannel approach include? Because remember, we want to keep this customer happy. So it includes service. We have to have service because without the service, you can't get the customer to come back to you. Remember, we want retention. And then, of course, the products. The products always have to have strong quality and expansion in certain things as well. So that's really important. So the customer sits in the middle of the entire omni-channel approach. So if we know what we need, where we need to be, remember that was one of the P's, that's place, right? If we know where we need to be, then what is the mission? What do we have as a mission for us as an omni-channel product? Well, everybody's mission, everybody's goal as a marketer, if we're selling brand, product, or service, should be to satisfy consumers' needs and wants. So everybody's goal should be to satisfy consumers' needs and wants. Anytime, anywhere, wherever, right? Whenever. That's really important. So you have to deliver customer value at a profit because as a business, you still need to make money. So you shouldn't sell your product as a loss because you could sell more of them, of course, but then you'll be out of business. And there's been plenty of companies that have started the strategy that way and they ended up out of business sooner than they expected because you do need to make a profit. So you make sure that you satisfy the consumer's needs and wants anytime, anywhere, whenever, however, but make sure you're doing it at a profit, not at a loss. So that means you have to also calculate your returns. You have to calculate your shipping. You have to calculate your perishable. All those things have to be calculated at the end of the day to make sure that you are actually keeping money in your pocket. Now, in 26, we're in a stage where we're calling this seamless commerce. Why? Why is it seamless? Well, think about it. When you're making a purchase, you are going online and you're getting the product magically is getting delivered to you, or you're going to the store to pick it up, right? That's what we call BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store. And everything is happening around adding value and remaining consistent so that we're being served, we're getting our needs and wants served and satisfied. And we're also looking at how we keep true to our social contribution. Say, let's be socially conscious in the things that we do too. So seamless commerce is something that is going to exist for the rest of our lives. Now that we're here, we're not going back, and that includes being able to get different pricing on product, get different deliverability on product. It includes getting maybe customization of different products. So all that is part of the seamless commerce journey. Now, when we add all the strategy that we applied for the last 15 years, the digital marketing strategy that's been applied, we know that the internet is out there, and we use the internet to use to put out our content to market a brand or a product or a service. And how do we do that today? Well, we do that with websites, we do that with SEO, and we do that with social media. So websites are important because most people will go ahead and validate a company based on the website they see. It makes them feel comfortable, right? If you go to a new product or service and you see a website that is not really doing its thing, you don't feel as comfortable being a customer to them as a new customer. So you have to make sure that it's good. And I always used to explain this way. If you had a store, and my first business was a retail store, And any retail store you go in, you expect that retail store to have inventory, to have people to take your money when you buy something, to have people to answer your questions. When you have a question, you expect them to have product. You expect them to have variety. You expect them to take your credit card. You know, that's all part of the expectations when you walk into a retail store. Then you also expect the store to be clean and organized, and the bathrooms are clean, right? They're not dirty, and you could walk through the aisles with no issues, and you could find your size, and you could find your color. Everything is organized in the store. So if you visualize that, and you agree with me that that's the way a store is, with the exception of maybe a couple of these discount stores like Ross or Marshalls or something like that, right? They could be a little more disorganized, but they are pretty organized in the end. Um, so when you walk into a store, you expect all that. So when you get on a website, that website is a reflection of your brand. So it has to be as good as you have it in the store. It shouldn't be one less. Okay. And now with this omni-channel approach, the goal of a brand is to make sure the website feels as good or looks as good or operates as well as the store does. Sometimes the store is not as well as the website because you could make immediate changes on the website. So that's really important. And then we have, of course, all the social media. You could sell now on TikTok, which is growing rapidly. That's pretty amazing. And of course, then you have what we call search engine optimization. And now there's optimization for AI. So you have to make sure that you're optimizing for AI as well. So that's what the digital marketing strategy includes. Okay, so again, remember that the omni-channel strategy includes the consumer in the middle. You have product, trends, marketing mix, and channel that all connect to this and push this strategy through. So your product has to be good. You have to understand the trends that are out there, your marketing mix, the 4Ps, product, which we covered already, okay? Place, promotion, and price all have to be tied together, and your channels have to be set up. Channels is part of place as well. So you see there's some redundancy here, but that's how important this is. And the consumer is sitting also in the middle of this strategy. So now we have what we call the omni-channel strategy flywheel. So again, if you notice the last couple of slides that I've been showing you based on strategy and operational things, the consumer is always in the middle. So that's very valuable to understand. When you're asking questions about my website, you're asking questions about my brand, you're asking questions about my strategy, always think about the consumer. What would your target market, your consumer, think about what you're doing? And will they accept what you're doing? That's really, really valuable. So if you get stuck, always go back and ask yourself, well, what would the consumer do, right? Okay, so now if we look at the flywheel, what's included in a real strong omni-channel approach? And this is just the top items. It's not all the items, but I think if you have all these items covered, you'll have a strong brand in the omni-channel world. The first thing, we'll start off at the top at 12 o'clock, is branding. So the branding is important because the branding represents what everybody sees in the product. Think iPhone, right? Think Mercedes. Think the different brands that you are in love with. That branding has to come across in everything that you do. So that means the colors, the fonts, the emotions, the feelings, all that has to come across not only physically in a store, but also online. And that includes your mobile devices. So when I talk about websites from this point forward, there is going to be an assumption that you understand that's from a mobile device because most traffic is going to mobile devices, not desktops. Okay. It depends on the industry. I know in the finance industry, it's sort of the other way around because people, they like to look at these financial documents on a desktop rather than their handheld. And I get that because you're dealing with different numbers and things like that. So maybe some type of finance companies might be more desktop than than phone, but most companies are all phone right now. Then the next part of that, as you move around the clock, is location. So, what is the location that someone's going to buy the product? Online, in store, on social. You have to have that location set up. And that was the place from the four P's. Then, of course, that means the website has to be up and running. It has to be good. It has to be strong. And then even an app could be something, because remember, there's a difference between the app and a mobile device or a mobile website. Okay, so there's two different things there. So you might only have a website that is optimized for mobile, but then you also have a separate app. Okay, then you have social media, and you notice that social media and each one of these circles is important, but the larger the circle, the more important it is, at least I believe so, for your omni-channel strategy. So then you have social media, and of course, social media, everybody's on social media. You have to be on social media, regardless of who, what, where you are. And it's all free, so you shouldn't bet. You just got to create that content, which is the next piece, which is content marketing. You have to put a lot of content out. That's really important for any brand. You have to be able to tell your story. And telling your story, how do you tell your story? You can use videos, which is one of the top forms of content. Content comes in all different ways, but videos are going to push out that message. And the videos today are easy to make, right? You could just use your handheld to make a video. Of course, you could get production values. You could have a highly produced video as well, spend some money there. But I tell you, with AI right now, I don't think you should be doing that, because you can create pretty magical videos without having a large video casting agency anymore. The next one is SEO, and that's really important. And it's losing its importance daily as ChatGPT becomes more relevant. Okay, so SEO is still important though for the basic website. And then you have personalization. Remember, we're targeting the consumer, so we have to be able to personalize everything we do. So that includes emails and text messages and push notifications. All the things that we do digitally should be personalized, because when you can personalize something, you build that relationship. You're getting closer to them, and that's what we want. And how do we personalize things? Well, we could personalize things through email marketing, right? So the email marketing is important, and you're going to get all that information from the purchases from your CRM. When a customer makes a purchase, you get that email marketing from them because you're getting that data. And then the next stage, not everyone has this set up yet, but it's becoming more prevalent as well, is a loyalty program. And you really need a loyalty program to help customers feel engaged. And it doesn't have to be every dollar you spend, you get something. Maybe it could be a loyalty program that if you make 5 purchases, right, you get a free something or other. That happens in retail stores. Remember the retail stores that used to have these little punch cards, and they say you buy 5 coffees, you get the 6th one free or something like that? Well, the loyalty program online can do the same thing. And there's so many different loyalty apps right now that can help you do that. And then the next thing would be SMS pushes. So the text and MMS, you need to make sure that you're capturing that phone number as well. This is all opt-in information. So you have to make sure that you're getting permission to do this. But once you do, you could send them emails. You could send them text messages. That's really valuable. And then everything is connected to your search engine marketing. Okay, that's all tied together. And then everything is connected also, before we get back to the branding at 11 o'clock here, is your CSR, your customer service reps. So you have to have some type of customer service. Right now, today, I saw an article just today about the AI voice customer service, how advanced it's gotten. So you can have an AI voice customer service help you, and those are inexpensive, and then maybe have them opt to a human voice or a real person after that. All right. So this is the flywheel, at least the most important things that I would consider you need to have set up for your omni-channel brand. And AI can help with each one of these key factors right now. Each part of the flywheel can be helped or be done or completed or partially completed through some type of AI software. All right, let's talk about the conversion funnel because the conversion funnel is really important. And I think what you need to know here about the conversion funnel is that you have to route your customers from first becoming aware of you to um, the brand that's making the purchase. So everybody starts off somewhere. So the first thing you have to do is become aware of the brand that you're buying. Now that can happen from your website, that can happen from social, that can happen from someone sending you a link or something like that. So you have to take your customers from the first becoming aware of you to making a purchase. That's the goal as we move down this funnel. Now, that includes keeping the customer, that includes upselling the customer, that includes cross-selling the customer, and in some cases it includes subscription-based models as well. So you have to make sure you're always opting for that customer to have the retention. That's very valuable. So you have to take them on this journey, this consumer journey, and you have to understand each part of their journey in order to be successful with them, in order to market to them correctly. This slide is maybe a little difficult to look at. I'm going to break it down. It really has the entire process of that omni-channel purchase, at least online. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to start in the very middle with the big arrows, the big down arrows. That's the very big section right here on the right hand side. That is our funnel that we were just talking about. So imagine customers coming in the top of the funnel. That's awareness. They're becoming aware of your product. They're getting used to your product. And then they move down into the next stage of the funnel. That's consideration. Well, when does the customer get to consideration? Well, they get to consideration after they feel a little more comfortable. Maybe they gave you an email address, okay? And now you could email them, and then you're emailing them offers and specials and things like that. So they're considering by making a purchase with you. Eventually, they get down to that important part, the middle of the funnel, and that's called conversion. So they're converting, they're making a purchase. Now, that's great because we want consumers to make a purchase. That's the whole idea here. But it's better when they get to the next stage of the funnel, which is retention. That means that we're keeping them as customers because anything can happen after that first purchase. We need to keep that customer happy. We need to make him come back and make a second purchase, a third purchase, and a fourth purchase. And when you do that, you get to that next level of the funnel, which is what we call brand champion. Now, when you're at the brand champion level or loyalist, or brand advocate, there's a lot of different words for that, but basically it means that you are in love with my brand and you're not going anywhere. Not for any other prices, not for any other delivery, not for any other color. I have everything you need in that particular product. You're my loyalist. So I'm going to treat you that way. I'm going to treat you special. I'm going to make sure I'm taking care of you the way I need to because you're helping me build my company. Okay, so that's the funnel: awareness, consideration, conversion, retention, and brand champion. Now, let's look at the right hand side of the funnel because these are estimates of what we call sessions. Sessions are how many people visit a website, let's say. Okay, so in the beginning, when someone becomes aware of you, maybe they're visiting your website and that's 100%, right? You have all these people coming in, coming in, coming in. And then as they gain interest or lose interest, that knocks down to about 50%. And then as that 50% knocks down a little more because some people are just gonna leave and not come back. Maybe they're not gonna find what they want. Maybe they don't like the website. They're not gonna make a conversion, but maybe 30%, right, would convert, which would be a good conversion rate. 30% is a very good conversion rate, strong conversion rate, but they only make one purchase. And then that knocks down to about 10%, maybe just about 10% of those visitors of the original 100 will be retained. And then maybe even 10% of that retention rate will become brand champions. So you see, as we're moving down the funnel, we're losing opportunity. But we always have to keep people coming into that funnel. So on the in the white arrows in the white boxes, the call outs there, that's sort of the website journey. The website journey will start at awareness. That's a site visit. Then they might go into a product, check out a product, go back and forth, go back and forth. Then they might add to a cart, right? And then they check out. That's conversion. So that's sort of the basic steps. You're going to visit a website, you're going to check out a product, you're going to add to the cart, and then you're going to check out and pay for the product and add it to your cart. If you do that in any website, Amazon or any app, Amazon, whatever it may be, Professor Ken's water, it will happen the same way. After you check out, remember, we want retention and brand champions. So now we have to have service. Now we have to have some follow up. So it's important that we have that service with you. So we make sure that we send maybe surveys and things like that and ask you, okay, how are you? Did we do okay? Did you like the product? Things of that nature, right? Because we want to make sure that we're keeping you happy, send you discounts to come back, things of that nature. Okay, so that's the website. So now you can see we have the funnel. We have the actions that the consumer will take on the website here in the white. And then at the far left of the slide, I put issues. And why did I put issues? And I don't like saying issues. I like saying opportunities. But what can happen when a consumer starts this journey? Well, just by visiting the website, they can go to the website and your website is not good. So they bounce, right? They just leave. So that's called bouncing. Let's get out of here. They bounce, and that's what bounce rate is. A bounce rate is a measurable rate that you can see on analytics that will tell you how many people come to the website and just leave. They just leave and they're not even there for more than 6 seconds. Okay. So that's not good because maybe you spent money on an ad to get them to your website. They get there and they leave. It's like you going to a physical store and that store is like not organized, right? It's the lights are dim. There's nobody around. The clothes are on the floor. The aisles are all messed up. You're leaving. You're not making a purchase. Okay, that's bouncing. The next thing that can happen when you look at the product is you can look at the product, you look around, and then you just leave from that area. So you stayed in and you looked around a little bit. You went to a product, but then when you went to the product page, and we call them PDPs, P, product, D, detail, P, page. PDPs, product detail page. So when you get to that product page, it doesn't have enough information for you to convert. So you leave there. All right. The next thing that can happen is, okay, you get through all that and maybe you get to a product page and then you say, oh, I like that. I'm going to put it into the cart. And then you just leave the cart there. You don't make that final purchase. So what do we call that? We call that an abandoned cart, right? You just left the cart and you left. So that could be an opportunity there. And then you have the checkout process. Every once in a while, I come across a website that has a horrible checkout process. And I just stop my purchase. I just don't go through with it. And that's where we can lose that customer at that payment issue, right? And then lastly, we have the service piece. The service piece, how could that get affected? Well, we all know what 5 stars are, and we all know what 1 star is. We all know what reviews can do for your business. It could hurt you and it can help you. So you have to make sure that you're managing these reviews and you're keeping the customer happy. So this whole chart is really giving you a layout of the consumer funnel, the website journey, the issues that you might see on the website because the website might not be performing well, and the numbers, the estimated numbers of how people come in and leave. So at the end of the day, you're keeping maybe 2% as brand champions. So if 100 people come in, maybe you keep 2 or 3. I've seen as many as 4 or 5 as brand champions. So for every 100, you're keeping 2. That's where you got to keep these customers happy. So let's talk about e-commerce. What types of e-commerce stores are there right now? Well, there are B2C, that's business to consumer. We all know what that is. We're all consumers. We buy online all the time, each one of us. Then there's B2B, that's business to business, okay? And then there's even C2B, which is consumer to business. That's where the consumer can sell things out the other way around. Some cases, marketplaces are put into there as well. And then there's D2C, and sometimes it's the letter T, so it's DTC, or sometimes I've seen it with the number two, D2C, and that's direct to consumer. A lot of companies right now are doing direct to consumer sales. Why? Why is it good? Well, it's good because A, you're cutting out all the middlemen. You are getting that customer information that's important. I mean, think about this. If we're building a relationship here and we have a great relationship and we've had a great relationship for years. However, you've been buying my brand through Amazon or something like that. Well, Amazon keeps all that data. I have no idea that you love me. I have no idea how you love me or not. So when I go direct to consumer, now I build a relationship directly with you. So now you can show me your love and I can show you my love back because I'm going to send you discounts and specials and things like that. And when you get through my funnel, I'm going to give you special deals. So direct to consumer is really attractive, especially for marketers, because it'll help get that personalized data, which is very valuable. It'll help me get closer to my customer, and it's less expensive to market in most cases. Not all cases, but in most cases. So those are the type of e-commerce sites that are out there. Okay, so let's talk about e-commerce concepts. And e-commerce concepts tie in very nicely to marketing concepts overall. And some of these concepts have been around for as long as I've been around in marketing. Okay. So they've been true and blue and been used for many, many years, decades upon decades, but now we still have to use them in the e-commerce world. The first concept that we have to understand, and I won't go into detail in all these concepts here, but I just want you to understand briefly what each concept is because it's valuable on a website. The first concept is brand positioning. So, what is brand positioning? Well, brand positioning, simply stated, is how your brand is seen in the eyes of the customer. So, if you make a product and you make a very high-end, expensive product, the consumer has to see you as a high-end, expensive product. So you position the product there. Now, there's a lot of things that can happen there strategically, so we have to understand that. But the customer is looking for how you position the product, and the competitors are looking for how you position the product as well. Then the next thing, that leads to the next thing, which is brand value. Every product we sell has to have some value. Remember that everything we buy is a need or a want or a desire, right? Or we're trying to move from one place in our lives to another place in our lives. That's what really we're doing. So, if we're thirsty, we want to become not thirsty. So we buy a bottle of water. If we don't have a car, we want to buy a car, right? So we go from not having a car to having a car. So you see, we're moving from one part of life to another part of life. That's sort of the value has to come to me now, because if I'm spending money on your product or service, I better get the value that I deserve, because I don't work all these hours to buy your product and then your product doesn't live up to what you're saying. So value has to be there. And that takes us to the unique selling proposition. And we call unique selling propositions USPs. Sometimes you may hear the word UVP, unique value proposition. But basically, the USP is what we call differentiation. That means that your product is different than somebody else's product. So you have a unique selling proposition that is separating your product from somebody else's. That's why I spend my money with you rather than someone else. So you have to make sure you have that USP set up. And it has to clearly state that somewhere on your website. You have to scream on your website why you're different. And then you have the final piece of this is your sales and marketing strategy, which you have to have a strategy. You have to have a sales strategy, which means how you're going to get customers, how you're going to find customers, how you're going to keep customers. You're going to have a marketing strategy, how you're going to promote, how you're going to work on social, how you're going to work on the website. All that has to come together. So these key concepts have to be tightened up when you're doing anything online. So now let's talk about something that really, for me is important, and I think for everybody should be important. That's the quality of the content, quality photos and quality videos that you use. You have to make sure your content is great on your website because you don't want to represent something that is not good. Because remember, if they're going to the website, they're checking things out. It has to be good. You have to make sure that there's a good representation of what you're selling there. So that means good quality photos, good quality videos. And then the website also has to include very easy navigation. So navigation means how you get around the website. You go to the home page, you go to men's clothing, you go to men's business shirts, you go to men's business shirts red, you go to men's business shirts red with button down collars. So you see, I'm going down the menu, I'm going down the navigation, I'm drilling down, I'm filtering down. That's all important. You have to make sure that you do that. So navigation and filtering is really important on any website. And then lastly, you should have a general search on your site. Nowadays, it's pretty easy to do that. So I don't have to do all that work. I could just search up men's business shirts red in my size, right? Or my price or something like that. So these are really important concepts that you have to have worked through on your website. Okay, here's another important thing that we have to have, a call to action. What does that mean? A call to action means I'm asking you to take an action. So that means I'm asking you to spend money, that shop now or buy more or get on sale, anything like that. Anything I do to get you to take action. Sometimes it's not a transaction. Sometimes it's downloading a PDF, looking at a video, going to the next page, sending me your email. That's all action stuff. That's good. If I get you to do that, that's really important. So some of the typical call to actions could be things like lead captures. If you're doing a service business, you want to capture a name, a phone number, email address, things like that. You could have a scrolling lead capture where you're actually capturing how they scroll through the site when they put their information in. And you could have also something simple. They used to call them newsletters. I'm gonna have to change that word because they're not really newsletters anymore. They're more like email blast or something like that. But everyone still calls them newsletters. Subscribe to it, right? You'll get the monthly updates, the weekly updates, whatever it may be. So that's a call to action. So there are many different types of call to actions that you can put on your website. If you're an e-commerce website, most of it is buy now, shop here, do that type of thing. But also you need to have some type of call to action that's going to help you get information from that customer. That's really valuable too. Okay, so now we talked about some of the concepts. Now let's talk about the idea of design, just so we understand how a design of a site should roll out. We want to look at imagery. That's all the photos. Make sure that everything is consistent with the brand and everything is relatable. You really want to have some type of emotional connection. Okay, so consistency with the brand and emotional connection. Let the images drive you to do something. The colors of the site have to be welcoming. So the colors represent the feelings of the site sometimes. They tie into things. I like using this blue as an example. Blue is a very calming color. You look at this and you look at this slide and you say, oh, that's a nice calming slide. If this slide was green, it might be actionable, it might be too heavy. If it was red, it might represent something else. If it was just white, it might be too boring. So colors represent feelings, and there's a whole science behind colors, how they change individuals' emotions and feelings. So the website tone and the colors all are important. Now the copy is what you write. So the tone of your voice has to be exact. So tone of voice means how you're saying things. So it could be different. It could be professional, humorous, friendly, surprising, empathetic, depending on the target audience. So I'll give you an example. If you're using an AI tool right now and you're asking an AI tool to post a social media post for you, it's going to ask you what tone, how do you want it? Do you want it to be humorous? Do you want it to be direct? Do you want it to be engaging? Do you want it to be a little harsh? It depends on the words they put, but they're asking you, how do you want me to say this? And that's what the tone of voice means. So on your website, you have to have the same type of tone. So we talked about the color, we talked about the tone of the website. Now let's talk about layout. And again, this is not a technical discussion. This is just so you understand ideas behind this all. So obviously you want to have your logo and the name in the header of a website. You want to have a search bar up there. You want to have a navigation menu. You want to have contacts if you're selling something, a phone number. It just bothers me now when someone buries their phone number on customer service, and I'm like, oh, I hate when you do that. Why do you do that? Why do you make me try to find the number to get some help? A lot of companies are doing that. Why? Because it believe it or not, keeps people from calling, which is crazy, but that's true. But yeah, so I don't like that. You don't bury the number. Try to put it up there. And then a hero image. A hero image is basically your main image, and a slider. Most of these websites, you see a website that has a nice, beautiful image on top, underneath the header. You see it looks whatever it is. If you're selling bottled water, it's somebody who's drinking a great bottle of water, sitting on a rock, looking at a landscape, something like that. And that's what we call a hero image right there, the big image there. And maybe you have it on a slider, which means maybe you have three of them. Three is probably the most you want. You don't want more than three. I've seen five, but I think three is the perfect number for me. And then underneath that, you're going to have all your main content. And then underneath that, you're going to have a footer. A footer, just like a header goes across, is the same on every page. And most of you know what I'm talking about because you go to websites every day. And the footer is the same on every page. The footer could be bigger than the header because the footer could include all kinds of different things like privacy statement, terms of service, refund policy, FAQ links, things of that nature, and even have pages that you don't have in the header. So you can use the footer as additional space to put links to pages right on the home page. A lot of people don't use the footer that way, but you can. I bury my privacy, bury is not the right word, but I put my privacy statement down at the footer along with terms of service and any disclaimers. That all goes in the footer because I want them to be on the website. I just don't want to take up valuable space at the top of my website in my header. Okay. You could always link to them any way you want. So that's a basic layout of a website. Okay. So now let's talk about the flow and the navigation here. So what flow and navigation is how you get through the website. And if most websites are set up this way now, and these are all typical things that should be happening on your website today. If you have a website or if you're building a website, you need to have, these are basic fundamental things that you have to have happening, standard practices. The logo has to lead to the home page, and you always have to be able to see the logo. You should always see the logo on any device, anywhere you are, and it should always click back to the home page. Most of us know that. Believe it or not, there was a time when we built sites, and remember, I've been building sites since 99 when it first started coming out. That didn't happen, and a lot of people would click on that after they knew they can do that, and they would get disappointed. Then you have the catalog. The catalog is the product that you have to represent. So the catalog could be everything you sell. Now, you have to make sure the catalog is set up properly. So if you sell red shoes, black shoes, white shoes, men's shoes, women's shoes, kids' shoes, if you sell athletic sneakers, business shoes, you see what I'm saying? It's very different. So you have to figure out what that hierarchy looks like, how it all breaks down so that your consumer, your shopper can switch to the correct category of products and find what they need. Remember, I take you back to the first thing I said, the consumer is in the middle. If your website is not, a consumer can't get around the website, they can't find what they need, they're not coming back. They're on and off that website in less than 7 seconds. Okay. All right. Then that takes us to what we call breadcrumbs. Now, breadcrumbs are just like it says, the story, the fairy tale where you drop breadcrumbs and you go back to see where you were. That's what that is. That's where that comes from. And it's basically the navigational. Most of us just go back page, back page, back page. But some websites you can actually click on or put your mouse on where you are, and it'll show you how you got there, the steps that you take to get there rather. Okay. So breadcrumbs allow the user to return to get to where they need to go. And then of course, filtering, make sure your filtering is flexible, where it could allow your consumer, your shopper, to exclude unnecessary items. And then a search bar. I like having a search bar on the top because it lets users quickly find any particular item or category. So these are some of the main things you should have on the site as you're starting to work out the flow and the navigation. Okay, so now let's go back to brand. We talked about color quite a bit. We talked about tone. So brand is all of that. Brand is your colors, it's your type, it's your tone. Everything is specific to every business, and you need to have that defined. You should maybe make a style guide for your website and then stick to it. So a style guide is all these things we're talking about: the color, the font, the color of the font, the size of the font, how you can use the combination of the font and the color. That's what we call a style guide. Normally, in the past, marketing teams or designers, graphic designers would come up with that with the marketing teams. Now you can do it with the use of AI. You could go to Canva and you could upload your logo, upload your colors, or tell them what the color is, and it will help you build a style guide. Pretty amazing stuff. That is something that used to be very complex. Now it's very simple. And once you have that, now you have to make sure that you follow that guide. And anytime someone does any work for you, they have to follow the guide. Then we have to have consistency standards. So this is important, but it's a crucial part of any good website, because if you're not consistent in the way you do things, then that just confuses the consumer. It confuses the shopper. So that's really the foundation of a good user experience. And I'll take this into the real world for an example. If you go into McDonald's in Miami, you expect to see McDonald's in Miami set up a certain way. You go to McDonald's in Orlando, you're going to see the same McDonald's in Orlando. And I've been to McDonald's in different parts of the world, not to eat, but to check it out, right? More or less the same. The menu items might change, but it's the same theme, the same colors, the consistency is there. Websites have to do the same thing. You have to have good user experience by having good consistency. And then it also helps to strengthen your brand to the customer, because you're reinforcing all those good things that the customer wants to see. All right, most times we should have a blog, okay? And there's also blog standards we have to follow through. So blog standards are important because blogs are a great way to help demonstrate your expertise in your field or talk about a product, build trust with your audience, and even keep past customers engaged with your brand. Maybe they didn't buy something, but they see a blog on a new pair of shoes that they're thinking about. So you're keeping them in the consideration part of the funnel. So blogs have to be standard also. That's really important. And then we have the top layer, which is format. So format is how you structure the site. So maybe you have an image, then you have what we call copy. Those are the texts. Maybe you have a different, these are blocks. And I don't want to get too technical, but think of a website built on blocks. Okay. We all know what Legos look like. So think of a website using Lego blocks, right? You're going to build these Lego blocks, and each block can go a certain way. It could be a certain color, could do a certain thing, let's say. Well, you want to be consistent and have it properly formatted so that everything looks good. And I know a lot of small businesses don't do that, and they lose visitors because it's just too complicated. And right now we're not reading a lot of words on a page. Images, you got to have a good mix of images and words are important for the SEO stuff. Images are also important to SEO, but they help sell the product. Then we have testimonials. Testimonials are valuable because studies have shown that reviews and testimonials are actually more effective than paid media. 2 times and up to 10 times is more effective than buying an ad. Because if I see that Professor Ken likes this product, likes this restaurant, okay, I don't know Professor Ken, but I like the fact that he gives it a 5-star. And consumers believe reviews more than the company. Imagine that. What do we do when we go on Amazon to buy a product? Well, we look at reviews. You'd never met anybody that's on those reviews, yet you're looking at them and you say, oh, okay, Joe likes 5 stars. Karen gives it 5 stars. This is great. And sometimes they give a little more detail, so that's important. You could look into that. But we believe reviews more than we believe the company. And that's important to make sure that you have testimonials and there's standards there as well. Okay, then there's a design element feature called white space. White space is basically, it's an important element of the block. Remember, if I talked about bricks, if you understand and you visualize a website being made with Lego bricks, and you know how you used to make a wall out of Lego bricks, and then you would like space out a little window, and that would be empty space because you want to put a window there and it looks clean and it makes it look nicer, things like that, right? Well, white space is that window. It's a little different design element, but it's the empty space between the elements. You don't have to put something on every spot on the page. It's really a good design feature because it keeps the page from looking too busy and too clustered. So white spaces are important on the website as well. And then very important is the accessibility standards. You have to make sure that your accessibility standards are up to par. It has to be properly designed, and you have to understand that there are ADA standards now, and access to any information is a basic human right. And there are actually lawsuits that are happening right now because websites are not up to ADA standards. So you have to make sure, and there's a whole guideline on how to do that. There is AI software now that can help you with that, which is great, but you have to make sure you understand that as well. All right, let's talk about SEO a bit, and this is how we build the site. SEO includes keywords. Keywords are going to help you find the product. They're going to be in the title. They're going to make sure that Google's finding that, ChatGPT is finding it. You want to make sure you have the brand on every page. You want to make sure that your site is fast. We don't like slow sites. And we want to make sure that we're using all the important pieces, the technical pieces of SEO, which are things like the titles, the meta descriptions, the URL descriptions. That's all part of the technical piece of SEO. And you want to make sure your social icons are connected there as well. So all those things are important to have on your basic website. Now we have a whole session that we talk about SEO because there is a lot to unpack there. But understand that that's really important to help drive visitors and engagement on your site. All right, then we have off-page SEO. So we had regular SEO, which is the technical stuff. Then we have off-page SEO, which means it's not on your page. So that could be the offer you send out. That could be the copy that you make. That could be the relevance of what your site is in the Google world, in the search world. That could be your messaging that you have. It could be the targeting, how you're going after people. It could be the simple things like inbound links. Inbound links are lanes that come into your website. Outbound links or backlinks are links that go out, let's say. Okay. So you have to have a combination of the links coming into your website. All this helps with authority of your website, and Google looks at how important your website is. Now, it's interesting because with ChatGPT, if you're looking for things and you're using ChatGPT as a search, try an experiment or Gemini, you see you might get different results because the AI is evening out the field a little bit. At least I see it that way. And Google, even though Google started that way, they evolved to a different algorithm. So it's harder to get your website in front of somebody unless you're tied directly to that keyword. Well, the AIs are doing it a little differently now, so it helps a little bit for the smaller business. Okay, so now we have the e-commerce setup. So there's a lot of different steps in setting up an e-commerce store or doing an omni-channel store. Here's 9 basic ones that everybody has to keep in mind. The first one is you have to select your platform. There are many platforms out there. We all have heard of Shopify. That's what we call a 1P platform. You take the platform, you build out your website. There's Wix. I build in both of those. There's WordPress. There's a lot of them out there, okay? But you have to pick one. You have to buy a domain name. So a domain name is the street that you put your website on. So if the website is your house, the domain name is your street. Then you have to find a builder if you don't build it yourself. Now we have AI, which is great. GoDaddy has a whole program that uses AI. Wix has a whole program that uses AI to build a website. It might not be exactly the way it needs to be built, but it'll get the foundation done for you. That means you have to choose a theme. Normally there's templates that you pick, and then you have to add your products. So your products have to be added. They could be added manually or they could be added by a spreadsheet, but you have to have all the information there. And then you have to set up your payment options. So if you want to collect money, you have to be set up to process that. And then you have to also set up your shipping settings and your pricing of the products. So how are you going to ship the product? How are you going to price the product out? Once you get all that done, you preview it, you test it, you publish it, and you go back, preview and test it and republish. Okay, it's a process. I've done a bunch of e-commerce websites. The first one is never where it needs to be. In fact, it should always be evolving. There are some e-commerce websites that are changing on a regular basis because they're evolving, and that's the way it should be. Okay, so now we drill it down to website marketing, because now we built the website. Now we have to get that out there. So what do? Well, we use the credibility and the power of the brand that we're using in that niche. So we want to get more people to see and consume what you create. So when we develop the site, we have to be thinking about that strategy and come up with the keywords, come up with the important things to help people see the website. There's more detail here, but understand that this is the process. Once you get it out, then we have to start marketing. That it doesn't stop just because you build a website. That doesn't mean people are going to come. You have to market it. It's like if you were to open up a retail store and the store is there, but you're not marketing the store, unless people are walking by, no one's coming to it. So you have to market that website. The other thing you have to do is give all of your shoppers, your viewers, an opportunity to communicate and interact with you. Right now, we can use an AI chatbot. That's pretty easy. That goes right on the front of the website. So as they get engaged, they immediately open app and you start chatting. My website, as an example, once you fill out a form, my chatbot comes up and starts talking with you. You might not want to talk to it. That's fine, but there's engagement there. And now I'm getting information and I'm getting comments and I'm able to do that. So now my marketing efforts are more adaptive and I'm adapting to you as a consumer because I want to build that relationship with you. So that's the process that we have to follow. Okay. Now, here's the thing that I think we have to understand. There is basic website optimization, and could be a little more technical here. I don't want to go too technical, but just basic optimization. The first thing we have to do is have a title tag. We have to have Google know what that page is all about. So we're titling the page and we're tagging a certain way. For example, if that page has red sneakers on it, it should say Professor Ken's shoe store / red sneaker, let's say. Okay. It has to have a nice title tag that Google's going to see. Then we have what we call the meta description. Now, the meta description is everything that we see when we go onto Google. Normally, we go in, we put a search, and underneath the blue line, the title tag, you're going to see a little description of that page. That description is called the meta description, and that needs to tell the user exactly what that page is all about. And then on the page, we have to make sure that we have headings and titles. So Google is looking for, and not only Google now, but also I would say the AI engines are also looking for headings and titles of pages because they're looking for what that page is all about. So you got to have headings on each page. And the way headings work, they work in a hierarchical order. So it will be H1. That'll be header 1. That's the first header on the top of the page. And it's not the size. It doesn't necessarily have to be bigger font. It could be the same font all the way through, but technically speaking, it's given an H1 tag. That's telling Google that page is all about this. And then underneath that, you have other header tags, and that's H2, H3, H4, H5. It goes to H6. The lower you go down the page, the less important it is, but it's still important, and Google still picks that up. And that's some of the things that Google and Chat and Gemini are looking at. All right, then you have the URL. You have to make sure the URL is actually tied to what you're trying to sell there. That's really valuable. And then you have to have the copy, the body copy on the page. It has to tie into what you're selling. So if we go back to the product page, and again, that's called a PDP, product detail page. When you go shopping online again, take a look at that page. Let's say it's an Amazon page, and Amazon has the best product pages out there. There are some e-com sites that do, but Amazon has gotten it down to a science. They have X amount of images. They have X amount of information. They tell you the breakdown. They tell you how much per ounce it is if it's a weighted product. You see the items, the reviews. You see the cross channels. You see other competitive products. You see the reviews. So that's all part of that product page. And the body, the copy that you write are the words that get picked up. So if you're selling something on Amazon, those words, that copy, those keywords are getting picked up in the algorithms. So if you have a website, that copy and those words are important. And then the last thing that we have to keep in mind, and this is important too, not a lot of websites are keeping an eye on this, and that's the what we call the alt tag, alt tag for an image. So every image should have a name on that. So that also helps it get picked up online in search. Now with ChatGPT, I've heard that um, Gemini is really looking at alt tags a lot. So that means every image you have in your website should have the name of the product, maybe even the name of your website, something like that that's telling someone that that's what that image is. In e-commerce, it gets a little more specific than that because let's say you have a 8-ounce bottle of chili peppers. Okay, so the brand is Professor Ken's Chili Peppers. So the alt tag of that image, when naming the image, the alt tag might say something like this. It might say Professor Ken's Chili Peppers, 8-ounce bottle, and then it'll have a UPC number in some cases. The UPC number is the product identifier that helps identify that product. It's a lot of detail, but that's important because that's going to help get visibility on all your products.